Time and time again on this channel, I have talked about the importance of self-custody and the idea that one of the singular most valuable and most pivotal aspects and benefits of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as a whole is the idea of self-custody. The idea that you control your funds without relying on any bank, any government, any trusted third party or intermediary to store or move or transact your funds. And with everything that is going on in the world right now and tens of millions of Russians suddenly seeing that they no longer have access to their funds, this has become more important than ever before. But you see, self-custody does come with one big asterisk. When you take custody of your funds, you also take responsibility for them. You take responsibility not only for securing your own funds and maintaining backups and ensuring that you will have access to those funds decades from now, but you also take responsibility over securing yourself and your family from people who would harm you to get access to those funds. Well, stick around because in this video, I'm going to share with you one of the best possible ways not only to protect your Bitcoin, but also to protect yourself and your family from people who might try to get at it. If you've been around cryptocurrency circles, you may have heard of the famed $5 wrench attack. So the idea behind the $5 wrench attack is a simple one. You see, in all of our minds, when we go through creating security systems and backups for our Bitcoin, whether we're a beginner or an advanced person, we think of someone using some kind of supercomputer or being an advanced hacker, spending months trying to hack into our system, hack into our home security cameras, maybe get access to our backups online, hack into our phones, or whatever. Well, let's face it, the actual reality is that if someone wants to get access to your Bitcoin and your backups, they're not going to spend tens of thousands of dollars or months on technology and research. They're gonna spend $5 going to their local hardware store, picking up a nice heavy wrench and whacking you over the head with it until you give them access to your Bitcoin. Now, there are a lot of solutions for this $5 wrench issue, and I've talked about many of them in the past. At the very, very least, you should ensure that you do not have access to your Bitcoin on your person at any one given time. I've talked in the past about having multiple wallets and not having access to your main wallet at your place of residence. Another very popular solution for the $5 wrench attack is to have a multi-signature wallet. Now, we've talked a little bit about multi-signature in the past on the channel, but for those of you who haven't seen those past videos, the idea behind multi-signature is simple. I have multiple wallets which are all needed to sign one transaction. I can have a 3 out of 5 wallet, a 2 out of 3 wallet, or even a 17 out of 18 wallet if I so desire, meaning that in order to sign a transaction, I will need 3 different devices to agree on that transaction out of 5. Now, multi-signature is great not only because it makes it more difficult to sign transactions and allows you to distribute the permissions and access to your Bitcoin in geographic spaces, but also makes it very, very easy to back up. You see, if I lose 1 or even 2 of my devices due to fire, flood, or having to flee my country, as is happening in Ukraine right now, well, it's very simple to restore access to my wallet from the other 3 devices that I have. But up until recently, having a multi-signature wallet has been difficult and confusing and often risky. You see, if you don't know what you're doing and you don't properly back up your keys, you can lock your funds up permanently and have no way to access them. In a lot of ways, it's similar to so many different security systems where as you increase complexity, you also increase the risk of failure and locking yourself out. And of course, you increase the difficulty with which you can daily interact with your systems or your data. I'm sure many of you who have all different kinds of password managers and 2-factor authentication for your work computer can relate to this point. Now, I say up until recently because one of the most interesting developments in Bitcoin custody, in my opinion, has been the development of a company called Casa. Casa is a company founded by Bitcoin legend Jameson Lopp, and their principle is very, very simple. They help you create a multi-signature system and store one of the keys for you on their servers. The benefits to this are multifold. Number one, they walk you through creating a multi-signature wallet in a way that you can assure is going to be not only secure, but also foolproof. Whether you opt for one of their paid plans or not, they will help you set up a multi-signature wallet and walk you through every step of the process. But for individuals storing higher amounts of Bitcoin, Casa offers paid plans where they will not only store one of your keys, but will also, at the higher end of the program, give you a dedicated person who you can contact in the event of duress, for example, who will refuse to actually interact with you. An example here might be if you have 5 out of 6 signatures, or even just 3 out of 5, and you only have access to 2 of those signatures on your person. If, heaven forbid, someone were to break into your house and hold you at gunpoint, you would then have to do a video call with Casa and essentially would use the wrong passcode or a passcode that explains that you are under duress, and Casa would refuse to release your funds. Now, enough talk and enough theory, because the folks at Casa actually reached out to me thanks to my friend Li Xin from Keystone, whose hardware wallet I have reviewed in the past, and they asked me to try out their security service. And I have to admit, and I have to apologize to the folks at Casa, that I've been putting this off for a long time because all my hardware wallets are set up and all my backups and multisig and all my different devices have been geographically distributed throughout the country that I live in. And so I apologize to the folks at Casa and to all of you that it's taken so long for me to do this review, as I gathered all my backups from all over God's creation. But today in this video, I'm going to walk you through really quickly the Casa experience and show you some of the pros and cons and why you may want to invest in one of Casa's plans for securing your backup.
All right, here we are test driving Casa Gold. I've been putting this on for way longer than I should have because, as you can see, my recording conditions are still not up to snuff. So I apologize for that. As you can see here, we get a really awesome email from Nick Neumann, the CEO of Casa, when we first sign up. They invite you to a live webinar, and we'll need to go ahead and set up the Casa app. So we'll go ahead and install the app on the App Store for iPhone, and we will need to have a hardware wallet fully set up. Now, I don't know what that means actually, because I thought they helped me set up the wallet, but I guess we'll see. Fortunately, I already have a Trezor Model T, and I also have a Keystone device here somewhere in this mess that I will be setting up. And they're going to go ahead apparently and walk me through it. So I'm pretty excited and really, really looking forward to having my Bitcoin even further protected. The app is really, really intuitive to set up. You'll see Casa go ahead and give you a full walkthrough as you set it up, explaining to you what your basic multi-sig setup is and really guiding you through the process, letting you know how to set it up safely. And this really is one of the big advantages. They explain to you that your Bitcoin is protected by 3 keys, and to receive Bitcoin, you only need the phone. But to send Bitcoin, of course, you will need to sign it with 2 of 3 keys. So really, really important to understand. First and foremost, they have you set up the mobile key, which is stored on your phone. It's also securely backed up and will automatically be restored if you ever get a new iPhone. Really important that you don't lose one of the keys. Next, your hardware key is held on that hardware wallet, and using multisig means that you actually don't need to store your 24-word seed phrase because you can restore it using one of the other keys or both of the other keys. So eliminating that factor of a paper backup, which is a risk factor if you don't store it somewhere safe. Finally, the Casa recovery key can be used if you lose or need to replace your other keys. You can successfully basically answer security questions that we'll set up later, and Casa will allow you to unlock the recovery key from their server. So pretty cool, and they've gone a different route by eliminating the 24-word key phrase, seeing it as a potential security threat. Finally, they give you the single key, which basically is a simple, basic Bitcoin wallet like any other, and they have you use that for small amounts of Bitcoin that you can use in the short term if you need to spend Bitcoin on the go. So they understand that you might need access to some amount of Bitcoin for daily spending, but they don't want you to walk around with 2 out of 3 keys at any given time. They've addressed that by having you create a separate wallet, which is single key, lower security. So why don't we go ahead and set up the basic multi-sig setup really quickly. Casa then says, please remember, although multi-sig improves security, all direct key management means you alone are fully responsible for your funds. So letting you know that, this isn't a full backup. They only have one of the keys. They then walk you through the process of actually setting this thing up, starting with the mobile key. And that's it. It's that simple. They don't have you write down any 24 words for this step, and your mobile key is already set up because they know that you don't actually need to back it up because they will have one key and you'll have the hardware key.
So to set up your Casa setup, you're going really to need 2 things, at least for this account level. Casa does have higher account levels where you'll actually have multiple hardware devices. The first thing that you'll need will be a smartphone running the Casa app, which I will go ahead and pull up here and screen share. And the second thing is going to be a hardware wallet, such as the Keystone or the Trezor Model T. Fortunately, I have both, and for this tutorial, since the good folks at Casa connected with me through Keystone, we're going to be using one of my favorite wallets, which is the Keystone Pro. Now, in order to set this up, a couple different things need to happen. One, you're going to need to set up the software wallet, which I have already done. And then you'll go ahead and set up the hardware wallet. Now, one thing that was very surprising to me in the process of doing this, I actually expected that I would need a fresh device, and it turns out that you actually can do this with an already set up wallet. In fact, you have to have the hardware wallet set up. So go ahead and set the wallet up. So I will later be testing and seeing if it is possible to have both the Casa multisig wallet set up on the device and my other multisig wallet or even just a standard wallet on the device. Now, all we have to do here is go ahead and hit set up hardware key and select our Keystone wallet. Now, it is very important that you note you need to be on the latest Bitcoin only firmware. I was not on the latest firmware and I could not figure out why it was not giving me the right option. After you've done that, go ahead and hit continue. It's set up and then you will hit continue. Now we'll go ahead and open up our Keystone device, verify our fingerprint, and go to this hamburger menu here and hit multisig. If your firmware is up to date, you will then see Casa mode and hit confirm. To use a Keystone device with Casa, you need to be a Casa member and have Casa set up on your phone. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and hit continue. All right, next get the Casa app ready to scan a QR code. Next, we will go ahead and hit continue. It's ready. The device will then display an animated QR code, and you have successfully set up your hardware wallet. Let's hit done, and we now have our hardware wallet set up. Now, a couple different things here that are important and worth noting. Believe it or not, Casa actually says that they do not feel that seed recovery is necessary. In fact, they advise you, once you've set it up, to destroy the paper key for your wallet. That's because since you have multiple devices, they do not actually want you to have the vulnerability of a piece of paper lying around in the safe or in your hidey space. So they actually recommend that you destroy your seed backup, though they will also allow you to set up a recovery key once the wallet is completely set up. By the way, if you've been enjoying the content on this channel and want to support me, I encourage you to check out Crypto Cloaks, where I have created a special partnership to sell some of my Bitcoin-related artwork. Yes, some of you may not know, but I am an avid 3D printer and have been designing all different kinds of models and statuettes, ranging from a honey badger to a Bitcoin bull and even, of course, a Bitcoin bear. And I've collaborated with Crypto Cloaks to print and distribute these all over the world. So if you'd like a very, very lovely, at least in my opinion, piece of artwork for your desk to show what an avid Bitcoin fan you are, I recommend that you check out Crypto Cloaks. All right, the final step that we need to take here, as you can see on screen, is we need to set up Casa's key, which is the third out of 3 keys. We'll go ahead and hit continue basic multisig setup and set up recovery key, and it will ask us to set up security questions. So now we're going to choose 3 security questions, and these are questions that essentially allow Casa to know that I am who I say I am and also that I'm not under duress. So important to read this here. If you ever need a signature from the Casa recovery key, you'll have to re-enter the answers exactly as you enter them today. Casa will be unable to help you recover, and they recommend that you back up these on paper, even though they don't recommend actually backing up your 24-word C phrase. Do not use things that are publicly discoverable. So let's go ahead and fill this out.
A few minutes later.
All right, we have our answers set up, and I have to say one thing I did really like is that the answers and questions here were simple ones. They weren't really tricky questions like what was your favorite subject in 3rd grade? Well, I don't remember. Really simple questions. Who was your favorite childhood friend? What year did you first hear about Bitcoin? Who was your 3rd grade teacher? Things that everyone can remember. They did a really good job with those questions. Now we are officially in our Casa wallet, and we can very quickly and simply see that this is where our Bitcoin transactions will live. We have a basic multisig wallet, which is Casa's, I believe, $1,500 plan at the time of this recording. Note that they also do have significantly more expensive plans, all the way up to $5,000. Which have more keys, dedicated service, and on and on and on. So now you will see we have these devices already set up. Each one of these I can import or export a backup. And why don't we go ahead and try doing a real transaction, because it seems weird and scary and unusual to use multisig. Most of us are used to this single key that we're all familiar with, but why don't we go ahead and try doing a transaction and see how it feels. So similar to kind of any other transaction that you would do, we have a receiving address just like any other. And if we want to send over some Bitcoin, well, of course, I'm going to have to connect another hardware wallet because I keep all of my Bitcoin in cold storage, as should you. And of course, most of my Bitcoin is in multisig, and I do not have access to it. But fortunately, for the purposes of this recording, I've gone ahead and transferred some to another wallet. So, as I struggle to get this Trezor out of the case, I will point out also that Casa does recommend that you keep an additional wallet, a single key wallet for your small transactions, so that you don't have to multi-sign every single one of your transactions if you don't want to, and if you want to use Bitcoin on a daily basis. So why don't we go ahead and open up my Trezor here, and I will tap and put in my super duper secret passcode.
A few minutes later.
All right, our PIN is verified. And we are in on my desktop wallet. Why don't we go ahead and go to my computer here, and we will send a very small amount of Bitcoin. Let's try it out. All right, Here we go. And let's go ahead and scan. Of course, love the simplicity of just using a QR code. Zoop. Great. And why don't we just send really small amount of Bitcoin for testing purposes. Now we can go ahead and set a really low rate because right now the fees are quite low. 1 Satoshi per byte should get it there in about 2 hours. Replaced by fee is set and we are good to go. Why don't we just check our address and we're good. Review and send. Great. And we'll just need to put in our passphrase. All right, and confirm. And we will confirm that we are sending a minuscule amount of Bitcoin to this address. And let's hit send. Hold to confirm, and the transaction is sent. We should now receive it. Again, just like any Bitcoin transaction, we should be able to receive it on our Casa wallet. And I am wondering if it is going to automatically update this interface or if we're gonna have to do something in order for it to update. Transaction has been broadcast. I do also love that it is hiding the quantity of Bitcoin that I have in this wallet, which is really cool. And apparently I can add sub-accounts, which as you all know, I love as a feature for accounting and for security purposes. I love being able to separate my work Bitcoin from my home Bitcoin. So that's a really, really cool feature. Why don't we go ahead and see if we can refresh this and see if we get anything. Here we go. Apparently all I had to do was update and set the view asset totals. So for privacy reasons, obviously, they are not showing the transactions and not showing the totals, but you can see that I have now received the 0.00025 Bitcoin. Now, one thing I do want to point out here, and I think it's an important note, is because this is multisig and because not everyone has rolled out the new Taproot update, you'll notice that my receiving address here is beginning with a 3 and not with a BC1Q, which essentially means that, first off, people are going to be able to tell that I'm using a multisig wallet, or at least that I'm not on the latest, greatest version of Bitcoin Taproot addresses. Now, I want to go ahead and demonstrate because, as I mentioned before, the downside of having a multisig setup is the added level of complexity, which is a good thing for security, but a bad thing for day-to-day use for your large amounts of Bitcoin. So I do want to demonstrate how one would send a transaction. And the only way, although you have multiple signing devices, one that you don't control, which is on Casa's side for this plan level, one here, and also one on the actual software device, the only way to initiate a transaction is actually through the software device. As most of you know, the whole point of a hardware wallet is to be air-gapped and offline, so both the Trezor device and the Keystone have no communications hardware whatsoever. In fact, this one doesn't even have a port or Bluetooth or anything to connect to it. So if I want to actually initiate a transaction, I actually have to have my cell phone with me. And you may think to yourself, well, doesn't that create some security risk if I'm carrying around the ability to initiate a transaction? But I want to remind you that, as you'll see in a moment, in order to actually get that transaction to go, I'm going to have to sign it from multiple different places. So why don't we go ahead and send from our basic multi-sig address and hit send max. We'll then choose a recipient, and why don't we go ahead and just send it back to my own wallet here. We'll hit receive, and we'll hit show full address, which we then will need to type in a passcode for. Great. And we will access our wallet. And let's go ahead and scan a QR code. So just like all the wallets that we are familiar with, simple to scan a QR code. And let's go ahead and we can lower our transaction speed. Of course, very important for any serious Bitcoin wallet to allow us to set our fees. I really don't care about how long this is going to take because I'm sending to myself. So I'll do 2 Satoshis per byte and we'll hit review send. I can add an optional memo here, which I assume obviously is only going to be for me because the blockchain, you don't want to increase your transaction fee by adding more data into the transaction. And let's go ahead and swipe up to confirm. Awesome. I love that it used Face ID, some form of biometric, to actually sign the transaction from here. So that is our first signature added. And as you'll see, it says continue signing. And this is where, as I said, it's a little bit less flexible and a little bit less convenient than other wallets, but that's actually the whole benefit. So I have two options here. I can have Casa sign the transaction, which I assume will be automatic if I know my 3 questions. Again, that is the reason why they don't require me to back up my wallets with a paper backup. Or, and most likely this is the way I'm gonna wanna do it, I have my hardware wallet. Now, this whole system does not give you a whole lot of protection if you do not separate out these backups. So I highly recommend that you have these in different locations. Have one of them at your parents' house, have one of them at your bank vault, have one of them, the cell phone obviously, on you at all times. That's really what's gonna protect you from the $5 wrench attack. But ultimately, if you are a high profile individual and you are worried about having the $5 wrench attack, you're worried about your personal security, Casa does have better, higher memberships, all the way up to $5,000 a year, as I said, where they actually require multiple signatures, for example, 3 out of 5 signatures. Anyway, let's go ahead and tap to add a new signature. And it says, sign this transaction with your hardware device. When you're ready, we'll send you an email with a link to sign this transaction with your hardware device. Connect your device to your computer and open the link from the email. Now, I can only assume that the reason they're saying send an email and all that stuff is because most likely a lot of their systems are designed around using the Trezor device or the Ledger, which connect to your computer or your smartphone. Instead, we're not going to send an email. I'm just going to sign with QR code because I can do that on the Keystone device, which has a camera. We'll go ahead and set this up and say, it says, get ready to sign with your QR code signing device. I'll go ahead and go to Multisig Wallet, and I will open up on Casa this little button here that shows me, well, I guess I will show you all. We can go like this and scan it with the Casa device. Now this is an animated QR code, so we have to hold it for quite a while for it to scan. And there we go. All the information has now been sent over to the Casa device, which is incredible. I see the fee, I see the memo, and it says status unsigned. I can hit on the cell phone, continue, it's scanned, and hit sign. Now it's going to ask me to verify my fingerprint. Very important. Again, I love that every one of the signatures throughout this whole system require biometrics, so it makes it even harder for someone to use this. Now on the device, we have signed this transaction. You can see here I have a beautiful animated QR code, and I'm going to scan the now partially signed Bitcoin transaction, or PSBT, and add the second signature to the transaction. You successfully signed this transaction. Now this is really, really cool. And it's cool that we don't have to blur it out because this is a signed transaction. So my keys have never been exposed in any way, shape, or form or either of these devices. The transaction has just been signed and I have given the signature here. You can now see on screen, transaction is ready to be completed. And let's go ahead and complete the transaction. So are you sure? Transaction fees have risen by 100%. Yeah, that's cool. And there we go. We have now sent out every last bit of the Bitcoin that we added to this wallet. And I have to say, that wasn't that hard. I mean, yes, it is a little bit of an inconvenience to have to sign on 2 devices, but again, that inconvenience is what gives us the security that we want, and that's what we're paying for when we work with someone like Casa. Anyways, if you are doing this correctly, as I am, you have multiple devices, you have multiple backups, you may have hidden wallets, encrypted backups, different storage locations. And the benefit of Casa is really that they make it dead simple with one comprehensive system. And at the higher levels of planning, they also offer things like inheritance planning and systems where you can have dedicated people that inherit your Bitcoin if something happens to you. And that's really valuable because I have to say, as with many people, my wife, my family are not super technical like I am, And I sometimes worry that if something were to happen to me, my wife may not know where to find all the different backups. She may not have her fingerprint on all my different hardware wallets, which secure my multisig, and she definitely won't know how to do this securely without compromising my backups, uploading them anywhere, or anything like that. So one of the things I've had to do is tell her about one of my friends who fully understands how this whole system works, and tell her to go to him with those multiple backups and multiple private keys if she ever needs to access my Bitcoin without me. Casa makes that a lot easier and a lot more simple. For about $1,800 a month at the time of this recording, you get access to their service, which will help you with planning what happens to your Bitcoin if something happens to you. And of course, you don't have to trust Casa because they do not have access to enough keys to actually sign transactions. Now, while we're waiting for that transaction to confirm, there's one thing I do want you to notice here, and that is that these addresses start with a 3, not with a 1 or not with the more modern BC1Q addresses or BEC32 addresses. And that essentially means that because this is pre-Taproot and not everyone has upgraded to Taproot, and also not all the rules of Taproot have rolled out, I'm not really sure how Taproot is going to affect multisig, but I do know that Taproot is going to make it so that you cannot see that an address is multisig, whereas here you can clearly see, at least at the time of this recording, that they are using 3 addresses and not BC1 addresses. The byproduct of that means that anyone that you send a transaction to or receive a transaction from is going to know that you are using a multi-sig wallet. Now, that's not bad in and of itself, but it is a little bit of a privacy thing that a potential attacker could know that you're using multisig. It probably won't help them attack you because your addresses and your keys will be distributed in different locations. But I also did run a check on Blockstream for the transaction that I sent over, and I did see that these transactions are still saving on fees by upgrading to native SegWit BEC32 addresses. So to the best of my understanding, just because these are not BC1 addresses does not mean that they are not the latest generation of addresses. They are just formatted in a way that will give up some privacy and allow people to know that you are using a multi-sig wallet. So this has been a longer video than I wanted it to be, and certainly has taken many, many more months than I wanted it to take. But I want to reflect on this whole experience with Casa and my thoughts about the Casa service. And I want to point out that Casa, although they did provide me with access to this premium plan, they have not paid me or in any way influenced my opinion. Now, at the beginning, and especially setting things up, having to erase my existing hardware wallet or accidentally erasing my hardware wallet, and then discovering that I actually can run multiple wallets right on here, the multisig and a traditional other wallet, I have to say I was skeptical. I know a lot of friends who use Casa, and I have held off up until now because I thought that it would be really, really inconvenient. And I will say that even for someone technical like me, there were some hurdles in setting it up, whether that means resetting up the hardware wallet, actually going through and updating the firmware after discovering that I wasn't up to date, and just generally understanding and needing to relearn some of the behaviors and practices here. For example, it was weird to me to burn my paper backup the way that Casa recommends. I had to actually think and get my head around, well, what is my risk vector here if I do walk around with both of these wallets? I'm not used to having the ability even to have these 2 wallets together. So what's that going to mean, and how is that going to influence my safety and the safety of my family that, for the next couple of days until I go out of town, this wallet and this wallet are together? And also, what does it mean that someone is able to potentially restore that 3rd key without this one if they know enough about me and are able to answer those 3 questions? So all of this took a little bit of thinking and reworking and re-understanding because Casa is offering a very different security model than what we're used to. It's not a trusted third party in the sense that you think of, in that they have no access to your Bitcoin. All they can do is help you access your Bitcoin if you have the responsibility of storing the other keys. And that takes some getting used to for sure. Now, overall, the user experience of setting up the Casa device was about as good as it can be for something as technical as a multi-signature wallet. And they do a great job explaining to you and even offering a completely free webinar that you can go on as a new client and learn and ask questions, because this is something that you need to get right. Ultimately, I have to say, I feel really comfortable knowing that my Bitcoin is backed by multiple signatures, whether that's through Casa or a structure that I set up myself. But I acknowledge that the vast majority of people are not going to be technical enough or have the responsibility to be able to set up, manage, and back up multiple keys on their devices.
Also, and this is a really big caveat that I didn't realize until I was pretty much done recording the video here, if I were going to use Casa's service, I really wouldn't go anywhere lower than the Platinum plan, which is $1,800 a year. And the reason for that is very simple. When you are able to unlock your second out of 3 keys with simple security questions, that is no longer protecting you from the $5 wrench attack. So unless you have video verification, I don't really see the additional benefit for protecting you against duress and the $5 wrench attack. That doesn't mean that I am against the gold plan. I certainly think it is much more secure than having all of your Bitcoin on a hot wallet or even a basic hardware wallet with 1 out of 1 signature. But it does mean that for the additional benefits of having multi-sig and protection against something like the $5 wrench attack, well, I would really only feel comfortable at the platinum or diamond level of Casa's service.
So would I recommend Casa for everyday people who happen to find themselves with large amounts of Bitcoin? Absolutely. Their trusted track record and the track record of their founder, Jameson Lopp, proves that they are through and through Bitcoiners who are going to do absolutely everything to support this community and empower its users towards self-custody. I love the way that they have completely rethought how self-custody can work and come at it from an angle that everyday people, such as your mom, could actually use the wallet, and especially with the help of the Casa team, could set up the wallet in a way that they are protected by multi-signature. Now, I'm still not sure if I personally am going to be transferring all my Bitcoin into my Casa wallet, but I really do love the fact that I have it. Sending transactions is much easier than I thought, and honestly, their wallet is just as good as any other wallet that I've tried, whether it's Blue Wallet or the Trezor Suite. Oftentimes you find that there's a huge compromise when you're using these kinds of native, integrated, built-in wallets, and that was my experience when I used Keystone's wallet, and the reason why I ended up using my Keystone with an external app anyways. I think their integration with Keystone is phenomenal, and I can only imagine the same is true of their integration with Ledger, KeepKey, Cold Card, and of course, Trezor. If you want to check out Casa, I benefit absolutely nothing from it, but you can check them out at casa.keys. They do have a free plan that you can use to secure your Bitcoin with multi-signature, or you can try out one of their paid plans, which offers more security, more keys, and more options and features. Thank you for watching, and as always, happy hodling.